I want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned before in terms of how we were, we were all struggling at the beginning of the pandemic. And I was actually thinking about this on a drive a couple days ago, and I feel like as musicians, and really all artists, our whole entity and being, a lot of our efforts are just proving to the rest of society or trying to validate our work as if, because I think for non-musicians or non-artists, they see the arts as potentially something, nothing more than an accessory, like something that's nice to have if we can have it, but not a necessity. And I can definitely understand the like literal like argument for that, but if you try to, I mean, if you think about the deeper meaning of like why we do what we do, then of course it's a necessity, but it's just it's hard to, it's an uphill battle for us as musicians, I think, all the time with that. So
Sorry, that's my dog.
no, you're fine. Yeah, but
No, that yeah, 100%. I think my argument would be one second, let me go.
yeah, just grab him, bring him to the
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
It's time to introduce my dog. Oh, that's a good boy. Come here. Come here. Come here. He's running away from me now. One of these times. I have an apartment that kind of loops in a circular manner, so
Right, all right.
I'll get him next time.
Oh,
But
okay,
basically, he just
actually,
chases me around. He's only like that big, so I'll get him before the end of the
yeah,
podcast.
sure.
But basically, to get back to your question,
Mhm.
I think a lot of it has to do with we shouldn't judge based on just pure essentials.
You're right.
We shouldn't be in the point in society where like, okay, food, water, shelter, maybe
You're right.
Wi-Fi. Like
Exactly.
it shouldn't be that's the absolute bare minimum. That
You're
doesn't
right.
define a society. What
Exactly.
defines a society, if you think about ancient Greeks, what defines them? Their their innovation,
Mm,
their literature, the
right.
fact that they had the first written music, for example,
Right.
their culture,
Mm.
and so the same thing happens with every great society. It's not just about, oh, they had food. Yeah, no shit, they had
Yeah,
food. Um,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
so a lot of it has to do with what kind of society do we want to be? And this is not saying, you have to have a like high classical music, like you have to have Baroque period players to be a
Right.
great society.
Right.
A lot of it is you should have accessible music to have a great society. Because also I mean, this gets into a bigger conversation about
Mm.
like the history of classical music is inherently troubled and it is inherently elitist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a reason why people don't always feel comfortable coming to the concerts because they're like, oh, do I clap here? Do I not clap here? It's a
Right.
lot of
Right. Right.
tradition.
Right.
Um, one person once described it essentially as, for example, an atheist going to a Catholic service kind of thing, where it's just like you don't know when to stand, when to kneel, when to pray, when to sing, whatever.
That's so
And in
funny.
some ways, it is kind of true. But I'm a huge fan of just breaking that stuff down because
Mm.
it's the same thing. For example, actually, I'm looking at the music right now for this. We're doing a mashup concert of Igor Stravinsky and Kendrick Lamar,
Oh
and
wow.
there's this fantastic conductor who came up with this idea. He does a lot of these mashups. His name is Steve Hackman. Um, he does like Brahms v Radiohead, Beethoven, and Coldplay, stuff like
Mhm.
that, where
Mhm.
he takes a lot of the motives. For example, I love this one because he really gets into, what is the human experience, what makes us human. A lot of it comes down to the basic emotions of good
Mm.
and bad.
Right.
And not only does Kendrick Lamar's, it's the Damn album, the one that won the Pulitzer, and it
Mm.
goes through all these human emotions in a kind of play-like setting where it's you don't really know if it's real or not in the album,
Mhm.
but it goes through all these emotions that make us human.
Mhm.
And the whole, I actually, here is my dog. He
Oh.
just came and sat down next to me.
Oh. 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 What's his
He's a
name?
guard dog. His name is Honey T.
Oh, Honey Tea.
He
Oh.
he's also about as chill as it comes, so he just like acts like a little baby. So until he hears, I think so. We have a valet garbage at
Mhm.
a garbage at the
Yeah.
at my apartment. So like
Mhm.
at 8 p.m. on the dot, people come around and collect the garbage from
Oh,
outside. So he
yeah.
hears them. He's like, no, not
Oh,
on my watch. Um, Anywho,
oh yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
this show is basically Stravinsky. Obviously, Petrushka is about a doll that's enchanted and comes to life and
Mhm.
struggles to feel like what is it to be human. And at
Right.
the end, the doll dies, but then it kind of messes with your mind because then it's like, but the doll wasn't alive to begin with, even if the
Mm.
doll died. But you still feel a sense of loss.
You're right.
And so Steve ties it perfectly together, where like each individual track that kind of goes through. For example, there's anger when the puppets are fighting and he's experiencing anger for the first time, or lust when the ballerina is seducing another puppet kind of thing. It's
Mm,
just like it goes so well, and I love this concept because it brings classical audiences a new and fresh experience that they can't hear anywhere else, unless they want to, I don't know, go to like Chicago or Cincinnati or something.
mhm,
And then it gives a lot of non-traditional audiences, somebody who might not know who Stravinsky is, it might give them a glimpse into what classical music can offer as well. Because I feel like a lot of times with modern society, we're much more focused on, you know, what is the TLDR version of this art
yeah,
form kind of thing?
yeah.
Like, do you have a 30-second clip to post on TikTok kind of thing,
Mm,
which is,
mm,
I, in some ways that's bad, but in some ways it kind of forces us to get to the core of like, why do we exist in
mm,
terms of like classical music or arts organizations?
right.
Um, and a lot of the struggle these days, because I know a lot of orchestras are facing audience shortages,
Mhm,
or just audiences that don't come back, kind of thing.
right.
It's more so about getting in front of people's eyes and showing them the offerings that we have. I remember I did an interview with this fantastic local writer,
Mm,
um, and one of the big things that we talked about was just like, personally, I remember personally offering this because I truly feel passionate about like people who don't know classical music or haven't been to a classical music concert before. I can look at this upcoming season, for it's not out yet, but I can look
mm,
at this upcoming season, for
mhm,
example,
mhm,
and I can guarantee I can find something that you will like.
mm, mm,
And I will explain it to you. I will explain why it's important. I will explain how it can potentially relate to your life, kind of thing.
mm,
If I start to get to know a person, and so I truly think that it's more of a just making it accessible to people,
right.
and part of that is breaking down the barriers of that make it, you know, I don't know, just difficult to attend. So, no stuffiness. If somebody claps, for example, we were talking about this last week with Chike Six.
Mhm,
I actually like when people clap on the third movement of Chike
yeah, yeah,
Six,
yeah.
because then there's actually there's one person who, I think this person comes to the symphony regularly, but
Mhm,
maybe he just forgot this happened. So
mhm.
he like just stood up, like suddenly standing ovation right at the end of the third movement, and then the conductor is like holding her hand out like this,
Uh-huh.
and she basically starts conducting, and as they're clapping, like I watched it, because I mean it's the same four notes over and over basically.
Right,
So I
right.
watched it, and you can see his like pure elation go to like, oh,
Yeah,
and like it makes you like, you can see them start to realize that this is not a happy piece, this is not a
right,
joyous piece, this
right.
is the piece before Tchaikovsky died. I don't
Yeah,
think Tchaikovsky even heard the premiere of this piece,
yeah.
because he was a really troubled, and he had a lot of the issues that we feel today as a society,
Mhm,
and he chose to express them through music. And
yeah,
so that is a direct thing. For example, um, somebody who's truly gone through loss
yeah.
can understand this is not just an interval that he's playing. This is the feeling that you get when you miss somebody so much and you just want to talk to them, but
Right.
they're no longer here. And so, I mean, it doesn't even have to be that down. It can even be like, if you want to just be in a good mood,
Mhm.
come and hear like a Mozart Symphony Concertante kind of
Right,
thing.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and just kind of don't come in with any pure like preconceived notions, and just kind of just sit back, learn a little bit about the piece, just read some of the program notes, so you know like what the composer was going through at the time. If you have any questions, literally just come up and ask any of the musicians. That's the
Right.
good thing about having such a young orchestra as well, is
Mhm,
sometimes there's a tradition of having that fourth wall. But
mhm,
like if I see a donor or a patron
mhm.
that like I was at their gala table the previous year, or we just like had a good conversation after a concert, like they'll come up and say hi. And or
Mhm.
if they're like, I'm not sure I understand that piece, then
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh yeah, I don't understand it either. Like, well, actually, like this is what I look for.
Right,
I
right.
remember there was a concert we did. It's called the Infusion Festival. It's no
Mhm,
longer a thing,
mhm,
but we did. We partnered. It was for Earth Day, basically. And we partnered for with a bunch of different organizations. We played this piece called "Become Ocean" by
mhm,
John Luther Adams,
mhm,
which is the absolute most boring piece I've ever played in my entire life. It's literally the same like six or seven notes,
mhm.
and it goes from triplets to quadruplets to quintuplets to sextuplets to
Oh.
septuplets to octuplets, and just goes on and on.
Okay.
Nothing happens. It's literally when I say it's the same notes, it's the
Mhm.
same notes for the entire piece.
Oh
And
my
so see all
God.
these waves and all this like ethereal stuff. And then I saw a patron that comes to a lot of the
Mhm,
classic concerts,
mhm,
and
mhm.
she was basically just like, was there some deeper meaning in there? I was like, I don't know. It was really boring. Got lost a couple times. Got back on. Like felt like I was floating in the
Oh
in the
my,
ocean. And she's
that's
like, "Wait, so you
so
didn't like it either?" I was like, "No, you don't have to
yeah,
like every piece. I
yeah.
despise that piece." But like, it's just like, "Oh my God, really?" I didn't like it either. But I was like nervous that like maybe like it was like a new masterpiece. Like, no,
Right,
we can
right.
make
No,
whatever
no,
we want.
no, I did.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's one of those words like it's so I think a lot of it to get back to the initial thing is
Mm,
there's inherent value that, and again maybe it's societal, like not to get into like super philosophical, but it's like the
right.
reason why, for example, as societies people view murder as bad, like
Mm,
it's something that people viscerally experience,
mm,
like it's a visceral reaction. I mean, again, some people would hear, like I speak this strong about Czech or
yeah,
Mozart or
yeah,
anything,
yeah.
people might hear that and they might not like it, and that's
Mm,
totally fine. I'm just
right.
saying that there's this reaction that people have when they hear this for the first time without any preconceived notions
Mm,
that I think draws them to something like this. And I guess the last part of it is like somebody once called an orchestra a glorified cover band, which is basically true. So I honestly enjoy playing a lot of the new music. Like we had
yeah.
Nadia Boulanger, who's
Mhm,
again, there's again talking about the kind of troubled history of classical music. Um, Women composers, composers of color, all that, they haven't been given the same representation.
right.
And it's so gratifying to see finally we're playing. I mean, granted, not even close to the same levels that we need to be playing in
Right.
terms of um, old dead white guys and non old dead
Yeah,
white
the
guys,
ratio's a
basically.
little bit off still.
Exactly. It's still, there's still a lot of work to be done, but the fact that like people can come see, I remember we played I mean, again, I don't want to basically minimize everything into like one quartet piece that
Mhm,
is like really effective, but the piece that we had a quartet that played a bunch of nursing homes, and we did
mhm.
a Mozart Divertimento, a nice little 10-minute piece. We played Jesse Montgomery Strum, and then a Dvorak piano quintet.
Mhm.
And actually, the piece that people were most drawn to was Jesse Montgomery's piece, because like
Okay.
Dvorak was like, yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Jesse's piece was like, it's like rhythmically charged,
Mhm,
it's something new and fresh. And so the number of people who were just like, there was actually people who came up, and this is a very artistically how do you put it, they know the art, they know, they
right,
come to the orchestra, they're
right,
subscribers,
right.
and they came up to us and was just like, can you write down some composers who are like the piece that we just heard? And so
Oh
it's like,
wow.
oh well,
Yeah.
there's so many. There's like Goliath,
Hmm.
um there's I'm forgetting their names.
Hmm.
But just a lot of these composers that focus on this kind of more energetically, rhythmically charged thing. A
Right.
lot of Jesse's other pieces like that.
Hmm.
There's a fantastic cellist. I'm probably going to butcher her name, Andre Casarubios,
Hmm.
who does a lot of work with Sphinx and with a friend, Tommy Mesa, cellist, and he premieres a lot of her pieces, and it's just kind of that same relationship. It kind of grabs you, and it's like it's fresh and it's new. And I think a lot of that is that also helps bring new audiences in, because
Hmm.
um, it gives people like they in some ways they feel like they're a part of the time, like Beethoven's audience when Beethoven was composing. They're witnessing the birth of these fantastic pieces by these great composers. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just this, there's no one size fits all easy answer. A lot
Yeah.
of it is kind of combining basic aspects of this stuff, and there's plenty more that I haven't talked about,
Yeah.
um, that kind of lead to the argument that like there is an inherent value in what we do.
Right.
We just need to let the audience, especially the new audiences, understand that by themselves. We can't tell them, we can't go out and pick and be like, we have inherent value. Um, we just have to present what we do and present
Mm,
the most challenging, I would say, musically and mentally,
yeah.
programs, the most diverse programs, and somebody will find something that they love within there, and then that will be the thing that brings them back to live music. Because once people, and again, it's one of those where I go on Spotify and I listen to Mahler too, with like, I don't know, Bernstein recording, conducting.
Hmm.
It's like once you actually experience live music, then you're like, yeah, that's great. But anytime I'm able to see Mahler 2 with the orchestra, I'm driving however far it takes to
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
think a lot of people feel the same way, even if they're not used to classical music. So.
Right.